Peasants were not the only members of French society to feel the Great Fear. Nobles and clergymen were equally afraid. Throughout France, bands of angry peasants struck out against members of the upper classes. In the summer of 1789, a few months before the Women's March to Versailles, some nobles and clergymen in the National Assembly responded to the uprisings in an emotional late-night meeting. Throughout the night of August 4th, 1789, noblemen made grand speeches declaring their love of liberty and equality. Although motivated more by fear than by idealism, they joined other members of the National Assembly in voting to end the feudal privileges of the First Estate and the Second Estate, thus making commoners and peasants equal to the nobles and the clergy. By morning, the old regime was dead. 3 weeks later, on August 27th, the National Assembly adopted a statement of revolutionary ideals called a Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, commonly known as the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Reflecting the influence of Enlightenment ideas and of the Declaration of Independence, the document stated that men are born and remain free and equal in rights, and that the aim of all political association is the preservation of the natural rights of man. These rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. Other articles of the famous document guaranteed citizens equal justice, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion. As the French people embraced the principles of the Declaration, the expression liberty, equality, fraternity became the slogan of the Revolution. However, the Declaration of the Rights of Man did not apply to women. Olympe de Gouges, a well-known playwright and journalist, criticized this and wrote a Declaration of the Rights of Women. Not only were her ideas rejected, but she eventually lost her head as an enemy of the revolution. Despite their radical political ideas, the revolutionaries were not yet ready to embrace equality between men and women. During 1790, many of the National Assembly's reforms focused on the relationship between church and state. The Assembly took over church lands and declared that church officials and priests were to be elected by property owners and paid as state officials. The reasons for the Assembly's actions were twofold. First, the delegates hesitated to further tax the bourgeoisie, who were strong supporters of the revolution. However, the delegates were willing to sell church lands to help pay off France's large debt. Second, the Assembly wanted to reduce the independence and political power of the church by putting it under state control. The Assembly's actions were opposed by the church. Many priests and bishops refused to cooperate. French peasants also rallied to the support of their parish priests. Many French peasants, like their priests, were conservative Catholics. Although the Assembly's move to make the church a part of the state was in accord with Enlightenment philosophy, it offended such Catholics, who believed that the Pope should rule over a church independent of the state. These changes in the church drove a wedge between the peasants and the bourgeoisie. From this time on, the peasants often opposed further revolutionary changes. As the National Assembly restructured the relationship between church and state, Louis XVI pondered his fate as a monarch. Some of the king's advisors warned Louis that he and his family were in danger. Many supporters of the monarchy thought France unsafe and left the country. Then, in June 1791, Louis and his family tried to escape from France to the Austrian Netherlands. As they neared the French border, however, a postmaster recognized the king from his portrait on some paper money. The royal family was returned to Paris under guard. By his attempted escape, Louis XVI made himself appear a traitor to the revolution and increased the influence of his radical enemies. For 2 years, the National Assembly argued over a new constitution for France. In September 1791, the National Assembly completed its new constitution, which Louis reluctantly approved. The constitution made significant changes in France's government and society. The new constitution stripped the king of much of his authority. Although the king and his ministers would still hold the executive power to enforce laws, the power to make those laws was placed in the hands of a legislature, consisting of one house called the Legislative Assembly. This assembly had the power to create laws and to approve or prevent any war the king declared on other nations. Despite the new government, old problems, such as food shortages and government debt, remained. Angry cries for more liberty, more equality, and more bread soon caused the revolution's leaders to turn against one another over the future course of the revolution. The Legislative Assembly split into three factions with different ideals and goals that struggled to work together effectively. Each faction sat in a different part of the meeting hall. On the right sat conservative members who felt reform had gone far enough and wanted to maintain the limited monarchy or even reverse some of the changes that had been made. In the center of the hall sat the moderates or centrists. They were supporters of moderate reform. On the left were the radicals, who wanted to abolish the monarchy and create a republic. The radicals favored major social and economic reforms. Beyond the assembly, there were groups in France that were far more extreme. On the extreme right, émigrés were nobles and others who had fled France during the peasant uprisings. They hoped to undo the revolution and restore the old regime. On the extreme left, the most radical group was the sans-culottes. Their name comes from a French phrase that means those without knee breeches. Unlike the upper classes, who wore fancy knee-length pants, the sans-culottes wore regular trousers. They were Parisian wage earners and small shopkeepers who wanted a greater voice in government, lower food prices, and an end to food shortages. Although they did not have a role in the assembly, they soon discovered other ways to exert their power as a group through threats, intimidation, and violence. In 1792, the French were faced not only with reforms at home, but also with a disastrous foreign war. Monarchs and nobles in many European countries feared the changes that were taking place in France. They worried that peasant revolts similar to the ones in France could break out in their own countries. On the other side, French radicals hoped to spread their revolution to all the peoples of Europe. They also thought that war would promote unity in France and distract the people from economic problems. When Austria and Prussia proposed that France put Louis back on the throne, the Legislative Assembly responded by declaring war on Austria in April 1792. Prussia later joined Austria in the war against the French. By going to war with France, the European leaders believed that they would be helping Louis XVI to regain his position as an absolute monarch, as well as preserving their own positions as monarchs. The war began badly for the poorly equipped French forces. By the summer of 1792, enemy armies were advancing toward Paris. On July 25th, the Prussian commander threatened to destroy Paris if the revolutionaries harmed any member of the royal family. This rash statement infuriated the Parisians. On August 10th, about 20,000 men and women invaded the Tuileries, the royal palace where Louis and his family were staying. The king's Swiss guard of 900 men fought desperately to defend Louis. The mob brutally massacred them. Louis and his family fled and took shelter with the Legislative Assembly. France's war with Austria and Prussia also affected daily life in Paris. During the summer of 1792, Parisians learned that French troops were failing to hold back the approaching Prussian forces. Just as bands of volunteer soldiers were preparing to leave Paris and reinforce the French soldiers in the field, they heard rumors that the Royalists, imprisoned in Paris, would seize control of the city in their absence. Angry citizens responded by taking the law into their own hands. From September 2nd through the 7th, Parisians raided the prisons and murdered over 1,000 prisoners. Many royalists, nobles, and clergymen fell victim to the angry mobs in the so-called September massacres. Faced with the threat of the Parisian radicals, the members of the Legislative Assembly gave up the idea of a limited monarchy. They set aside the Constitution of 1791, declared the king deposed, and dissolved their assembly, calling for the election of a new legislature. The new governing body, elected in September, called itself the National Convention. Just as the new government took office, France had a stroke of luck. A French army won the decisive Battle of Valmy on September 20th against the Austrians and Prussians. For the moment, France was out of danger from abroad. During the frenzied summer of 1792, the leaders of the mobs on the streets had more real power than any government assembly. Although the mobs were made up of the poor, their leaders came from the bourgeoisie and were members of several radical political clubs that had formed during the early days of the Revolution. The most radical of these clubs was the Jacobin Club. The Jacobins were lawyers, journalists, and intellectuals who met and engaged in heated debates about Enlightenment ideas. The Jacobins wanted to remove the king and turn France into a republic. One of the leaders of the Jacobin Club was Georges Danton. A fearless and passionate man, Danton was dedicated to the rights of Paris's poor people. He became one of the club's most effective public speakers. Many newspapers in France also pushed for reforms. One of the most radical was published in Paris by Jean-Paul Marat. Marat suffered from a painful skin disease that forced him to spend many hours in a medicinal bath. He filled his paper with fiery editorials that called for the death of all the enemies of the revolution. His views were so violent that he was eventually assassinated by a member of a rival political faction. The scene of his death was captured in the famous painting on the right by the artist Jacques-Louis David. The National Convention, meeting in Paris on September 21st, quickly abolished the monarchy and declared France a republic. Adult male citizens were granted the right to vote and hold office. Despite the important part they had already played in the revolution, women were not given the right to vote. The delegates reduced Louis XVI's role from that of a king to that of a common citizen and prisoner. Then, guided by radical Jacobins, they tried Louis for treason and found him guilty. By a very close vote, the National Convention sentenced Louis to death. On January 21, 1793, the ex-king walked with calm dignity up the steps of the scaffold to be beheaded by a machine called the guillotine. Louis would be but one among thousands who would die by the guillotine during the French Revolution. Marie Antoinette would also be executed a few months later. The new republic's first problem was the continuing war with Austria and Prussia. Early in 1793, Great Britain, Holland, and Spain joined Prussia and Austria in an alliance known as the First Coalition. Forced to contend with so many enemies, France suffered a string of defeats. The Jacobin leaders took extreme steps to meet the new danger. In February 1793, the National Convention decreed a draft into the army of 300,000 French citizens between the ages of 18 and 40. By 1794, the army had swelled to 800,000 and even included some women. With this massive army, France was slowly able to reverse some of its losses from the previous years. Foreign armies were not the only enemies of the French Republic. The Jacobins had thousands of enemies within France itself. These included peasants who were horrified by the beheading of the king, priests who would not accept government control of the church, and rival leaders who were stirring up rebellion in the provinces. How to contain and control these enemies became a central issue. As dozens of leaders struggled for power, a radical revolutionary named Maximilien Robespierre slowly gathered control into his own hands. Robespierre and his supporters set out to build a republic of virtue. They tried to wipe out every trace of France's past monarchy and nobility and create a new society based on equality and the rational ideals of the Enlightenment. For example, all formal titles were eliminated, and people were required to address each other simply as citizen. No household item was too small to escape the influence of Robespierre. Even the kings, queens, and jacks and decks of cards were changed to figures that represented revolutionary ideals. The radicals also changed the calendar to be more scientific. They divided the year into 12 months of 30 days and renamed each month. The new calendar had no Sundays because the radicals considered religion old-fashioned and dangerous. They even closed all churches in Paris, and towns all over France soon did the same. In the summer of 1793, Robespierre became the leader of the Committee of Public Safety. This group had been formed to protect the revolution from its enemies. As head of the committee, Robespierre now decided who should be considered enemies of the Republic. The committee often had people tried in the morning and guillotined the same afternoon. From July 1793 to July 1794, Robespierre governed France nearly as a dictator. The period of his rule became known as the Reign of Terror because so many people were killed in defense of the revolution. In his speeches, Robespierre justified the Reign of Terror, explaining that it enabled French citizens to remain true to the ideals of the revolution. In this speech excerpt, Robespierre makes a connection between virtue and terror. The first maxim of our politics ought to be to lead the people by means of reason, and the enemies of the people by terror. If the basis of popular government in time of peace is virtue, the basis of popular government in time of revolution is both virtue and terror. Virtue, without which terror is murderous. Terror, without which virtue is powerless. Terror is nothing else than swift, severe, indomitable justice. It flows, then, from virtue. The enemies of the Republic who troubled Robespierre the most were fellow revolutionaries who challenged his leadership. In October 1793, revolutionary courts pronounced death sentences on many of the leaders who had first helped set up the Republic. Their only crime was that they were less radical than Robespierre. By the beginning of 1794, even Georges Danton found himself in danger. Danton's friends in the National Convention, afraid to defend him, joined in condemning him to death. He was sentenced to be executed on April 5, 1794. On the scaffold, he told the crowd, "My only regret is that I am going before that rat Robespierre." Besides leading political figures, thousands of unknown people were sent to death on the flimsiest of charges. A revolutionary court sentenced an 18-year-old youth to die by the guillotine for sawing down a tree that had been planted as a symbol of liberty. A tavern keeper was executed because he sold sour wine to French soldiers. During the Terror, approximately 3,000 people were executed in Paris. Some historians believe that as many as 40,000 were killed altogether. About 85% were peasants or members of the urban poor or middle class, common people for whose benefit the revolution had supposedly been carried out. By July 1794, the members of the National Convention knew that none of them were safe from Robespierre. To save themselves, they turned on him. On July 27th, a group of conspirators demanded his arrest, shouting, "Down with the tyrant!" Historians refer to this event as the Thermidorian reaction. Thermidor was the name of the month of July in the new revolutionary calendar. The day after Robespierre's arrest, the revolution's last powerful leader went to the guillotine. The Reign of Terror, the radical phase of the French Revolution, ended when Maximilien Robespierre lost his head on July 28, 1794. French public opinion shifted dramatically to the right after Robespierre's death. People of all classes had grown weary of the Terror. They were also tired of the skyrocketing prices of bread, salt, and other necessities of life after the Terror. In 1795, moderate leaders in the National Convention drafted a new plan of government. The third since 1789, the new constitution placed power firmly in the hands of the upper middle class and called for a two-house legislature and an executive body of 5 men, known as the Directory. The 5 directors were moderates, not revolutionary idealists. Some of them were corrupt and freely enriched themselves at the public's expense. Despite their corruption, however, they gave their troubled country a period of order. France was still at war with many of its neighbors, but the Directory found the right general to command France's armies. This supremely talented young man was Napoleon Bonaparte.